Praise be Jesus and Mary. We've begun in the last few days to hear in the first reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Colossians. And it's unique, the letter to the Colossians, like that of the Ephesians, because these letters were written when St. Paul was in prison, when he had more time for prayer and contemplation, and when I guess there was less attention because of his apostolic preaching and other letters to the, the moral needs and corrections to be administered. It comes from his heart in prayer and suffering. And some of the more profound mysteries, especially of Christ, come out in these letters of St. Paul to the Ephesians and the Colossians. On Saturday, in the first reading, we heard about the primacy of Christ, how all things are created for him, all things are created in him, and that Christ has the primacy in all things. Today, we continue, and in order to understand today's readings, it has to be taken in the full context. And he continues, there's two themes to bring out. The second theme, and we'll get back to the first, is this mystery hidden from ages and generations past, but now manifested, now revealed to us. And what is that mystery? He says, it is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Christ is this mystery that God had before him, before creating the universe. In other words, God, when he willed to create, he willed to communicate his glory, his love, his grace in its fullness through the hypostatic union. He willed to communicate this divine life to a created nature, the human nature of Christ, in the incarnation. And then he created all things with a view to Christ. He had before him the heart of Jesus, and with and subordinate to him the heart of the mother of Jesus, the heart of the Immaculata. And then he creates all the universe for Christ, in Christ. In this context, this mystery, we can understand better what St. Paul is saying when he says, brothers and sisters, I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I am filling up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ on behalf of his body, which is the church. This rejoicing and suffering makes sense only in the context of the redemptive act of Jesus Christ on the cross, and understanding how he has given us a portion of this suffering. After all, there's nothing really lacking in the sufferings of Christ. His merits are infinite. We know that one drop of his precious blood would have been sufficient to redeem all of mankind, but that it was the will of the Father and his will to pour out copiously his blood for our redemption. So there's nothing lacking to the merits or the sufferings of Christ, but he coming as the head, here's the primacy, he coming to recapitulate all things in himself, to sum up all things in himself and offer praise and sacrifice to God. He has suffered the major part, he, the head of the church, but he has also left a portion of suffering to us, his mystical body. And so indeed it is a real privilege to suffer with Christ and to suffer for the sake of his church. In other words, to suffer with and in Christ for the salvation and sanctification of souls. And so in this sense, it's a little gift of Christ that he has given us to participate with him. In a certain sense, it's with the redemption, it's the more the merrier. God willed to include, even though the merits of Christ were super sufficient, super abundant, he willed to include the sufferings of the maternal heart of Mary, our co-redemptrix, and he also wills to include us. He created us without us, but he doesn't want to recreate us without us. St. Augustine points this out, that he allows us, he gives us this gift to suffer in union with him. And so we who are, through baptism, incorporated into Christ, the head of the mystical body, the church, we who are incorporated into Christ, the great high priest and victim, are also called to participate with him in offering the priestly sacrifice at the altar and to offer ourselves, our sufferings, in union with him. So let us thank the Lord for this gift to suffer in union with Christ, and let us know in the joy, it's one of the things that comes out with the apostles in suffering for Christ, that joy that these sufferings are efficacious. They make our prayers efficacious in bringing about our own conversion and also the salvation of souls. Praise be Jesus and Mary.